Page 49, calendar 436. Clerk will read.
Assembly number 9329, calendar 436, Smith-Jackson, an act to amend the real property law.
An explanation is requested.
Okay, so this bill would require a landlord of a residential premises to provide written notice to all tenants of a bedbug infestation within 24 hours of having knowledge of the infestation.
Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, sir. Would the sponsor yield?
Ms. Jackson, will you yield?
I yield.
The sponsor yields.
Thanks, Ms. Jackson. I had a few questions that I was hoping you could help us understand how this bill would work in practice. The bill requires a landlord to give notice to tenants, quote, upon having knowledge of a bed bug infestation. Would this bill require that the knowledge be to the actual owner, or could the notice come, be given by a tenant to, say, an employee or leasing agent or some third party that's related to the landlord?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Goodell. The bill would require that the tenant, the bill would require that once the landlord is made aware of the infestation, that they alert the tenants. So if the landlord has someone else in place that's doing the work of being a landlord, of handling the property, then that person should be responsible for making sure that other tenants are aware of this infestation.
So the reference to landlord does not mean necessarily the owner?
It says landlord or lesser, right? Lesser. What the hell is that?
Yes. Yep. So that would cover then not just the owner, but also a sub, in a situation where there's a sub-tenancy?
You're asking if someone is subleasing a place, if they're responsible for alerting the landlord?
Right, I mean, the lessor could be the owner,
Yeah.
or it could be somebody who leases the building from the owner and subleases it to tenants, in which case the lessor would be responsible and not the owner?
Yes.
I see. And then it requires the landlord or lessor to provide notice to all tenants and lessees on such premises. What type of notices would meet this statutory requirement?
So it says written, right? And so written can be an actual notice that you put up in the building. Written can be an email. Written can be like how my co-op does notifications. We send out notice by our app that we use. And so as long as they give out the notice in written form, that's fine.
So any reasonable method, whether it's text, email, voicemail,
Well,
obviously
maybe not voicemail.
first class mail,
Yeah.
a posting in the lobby, all those would qualify?
I would say everything except for voicemail because it's not text. It has to be written text.
I see. But text or an email would qualify as written?
Would suffice, yes.
I see. And it says not only to all tenants and all lessees. Is there a difference between tenants and lessees?
In the bill,
Yeah.
no, it's not no difference, right? No, it's not necessarily a difference. It's just the language used to acknowledge who should be responsible for notification.
Now this says the notice has to be sent out within 24 hours. In the civil practice laws and rules, if you send a notice by mail, 5 days are added. Is the notice be measured from the date the letter is put in the post office or the date of receipt?
So this bill doesn't go into the specifics because we wanted to make sure that it gives wide enough range for landlords to use their discretion on how to best alert their tenants, right? And so as long as once they are fully aware that there is an infestation and they make attempts to alert the tenants, they have done exactly what the bill is asking them to do within the 24-hour period.
Now, if the landlord immediately upon hearing of this infestation, or the tenant immediately upon learning of the infestation, hires a qualified contractor or themselves eradicate the issue, right? Does the landlord still have to give notice?
Yes, so the notice is about once they know that there's an infestation, it's their duty now to report and let people know that it's there. Whether it's already been taken care of is not what this bill is trying to make sure it happens. They want to make sure that people are aware that there was or is an infestation so that they can better prepare themselves for it.
Is there any obligation on the part of a tenant to report to the landlord a bug bed infestation?
Not in this bill. This bill does not speak to that. I know in New York City there is a request that tenants make landlords aware that they have an infestation, but this bill doesn't speak to that. This bill is speaking to making sure that the person who owns and operates the building is letting everyone else know that there was an infestation within 24 hours.
Now, of course, if a landlord knows of an infestation early, they can address it a lot quicker, a lot safer, and with a lot less expense than if they find out a lot later, right?
I agree.
If a tenant fails to notify the landlord in a timely manner, is the tenant liable for damages?
No, and this bill doesn't speak to that. This bill does not speak to anyone being liable for damage one way or the other.
Of course, we would hope that not only would tenants report it immediately, but that tenants would take all the appropriate steps to stop the infestation, right? And it needs the tenant's cooperation to stop the infestation because you have to wash all the clothes, right? And take certain procedures, which only the tenant themselves can do effectively. Is a landlord liable to tenants if the landlord fails to meet this 24-hour requirement?
Say that one more time, Mr. Goodell. Is the landlord?
Is the landlord going to be liable to tenants for costs incurred by the tenants, for example, in going to a laundromat and washing all the bedding and sheeting, if the landlord doesn't meet the 24-hour requirement?
No. This bill does not give either landlord or tenant a right to sue for damages or anything like that because of it. This bill is simply asking for the landlords to make their tenants fully aware that there was an infestation or is an infestation in their building.
Now, this bill requires a notice within 24 hours. What happens if the landlord receives notification, say, just before sundown on Friday and they're Jewish? Do they get an extension until the next business day? Or if they receive notification on a holiday or a Sunday, do they get an extension to the first business day?
Well, this bill doesn't speak to extensions or holidays or anything of that nature. It speaks to the fact that we know that we want to get rid of the infestation as soon as possible and reduce the amount of people that's impacted by it. So we would hope that everyone use their best judgment and to make sure that they alleviate the problem as soon as possible and alert people as soon as possible. So it does not speak to the language of holidays or any other thing that would keep somebody from giving the notice within 24 hours.
Of course, I keep hearing that there's a housing crisis in New York City, caused in large part
And
by...
I'm sure the bed bugs is not the reason.
Well, I hope not. But a lot of it relates to a shortage of affordable housing. Does this do anything to encourage landlords to invest in more housing in the city of New York, or does it now add one more burden?
Mr. Goodell, I don't know how the bed bugs that we're asking landlords to alert others of is keeping the housing stock low.
But this bill would require landlords to have the personnel, staff, or processes in place so that if they get a notification of bedbug infestation on a Saturday, they can get the notice out by Sunday, right?
Well, the truth is that there's already things in place that that New York State and New York City are requiring of our landlords, right? We are required by law to make sure that we keep our buildings and our apartments up to standards and codes that people can live in. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. If you could ask it one more time, maybe I'll get it.
So this will obviously impose more costs on landlords, right? Because they're going to have the staff and the processes in place to respond if they hear of a bed bug infestation. They have to respond on holidays and weekends and evenings and whatever to get out the 24-hour notice. So it does inherently will increase costs to landlords.
I mean, think of you had an emergency like a fire in one of your buildings. You would figure out a way to get people, you would figure out a way to get there, get people to be helped and be able to alleviate others so they're not impacted. So not saying that bed bugs are like fires, but the same staff that you would use if you had a fire in your development would be the same staff that you would use if there was a bed bug infestation. You need to alert people in 24 hours.
Does this bill impose any obligation on landlords to address a bed bug infestation?
This bill does not speak to that, but I'm sure you're going to put in some great legislation to address that one.
And does the bed bug infestation in neighboring apartments affect the warranty of habitability?
So bed bugs travel quickly. They can travel within minutes to different rooms, and they spread like, I don't want to say wildfire, but they definitely can lay up to 500 eggs in one lifetime. And so we want to make sure that everyone is fully aware. Even if they live not in the apartment, but the apartment next to them, the apartment above them, everyone should be aware that there was an infestation or is an infestation.
Thank you very much for all your clarifications, sir, on the bill.
Mr. Goodell on the bill.
Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues' comments on this. And the bill on its face is very simple. It says upon getting knowledge that there's a bed bug infestation, the landlord has to notify all the other tenants within 24 hours. I appreciate my colleagues' desire to get that information out quickly. I think 24 hours is unreasonable in the context of Jewish Sabbath or holiday or weekend. And it raises a lot of potentially unintended issues, such as, will this now trigger a landlord's obligation to do something about it? What if the tenant who has the infestation, what if they're Jewish and won't cooperate during that 24 hours to address it? I mean, not that they don't want to, they're religiously precluded from it. Oh, what if the tenant who has a bug bed infestation goes out on vacation? Does this create any obligation on the part of the tenant to actually address the bed bug situation in their own apartment? The answer is no. Without the tenant's cooperation, the landlord can't address it. Because in order to address bed bug infestations, you got to wash all the linens. And if the tenant's not willing to cooperate, the landlord is just stuck putting up notices. Welcome to my building. Apartment 1A has a bed bug infestation. So I appreciate the concern, but it leaves so many issues open, including liability issues. And it would be refreshing if this legislature started passing laws to make it easier to be a landlord, easier to provide high-quality, affordable housing, and not add more and more and more and more and more restrictions on landlords. So I appreciate the concern that we want to know what's happening in our neighbors' apartments and whether they have bed bugs, but I think imposing this burden on the landlords is inappropriate. Thank you, sir.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect on the 30th day.
A party vote has been requested. Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, sir. The Republican conference is generally opposed. Those who wish to support it can vote yes here on the floor. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Fall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The majority conference will be in the affirmative on this piece of legislation. For those that would like to vote in a different direction, they can do so at their desk.
Thank you both. Clerk will record the vote. Ms. Jackson to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to explain my vote. You know, our grandparents were onto something when they wrapped everything in plastic. But now we are ripping everything out the plastic and acting brand new. I'll let y'all catch that later. But back to the lecture at hand, bedbugs. I remember in 2010 when bedbugs tore up New York City. We were wrapping everything back in plastic. We shut down our movie theaters. We had to buy covers for our beds and our pillows to protect us at night. And, you know, the only thing this bill is asking us to do is to be good neighbors, good landlords, and alert the people around us. We know that a female bedbug can lay up to, how many? 500 eggs within her lifetime. And for me, it just makes me itch just to think about it. So I am voting in the affirmative. I'm going to miss these debates with my colleague on the other side, and I hope that everyone else is voting in the affirmative with me.
Ms. Jackson, in the affirmative. David. Are there any other votes? Announce the result.
Ayes 112, noes 34.
The bill is passed. Page 50.